each other and seeing us all as one consciousness having different experiences, instead of self-identifying with all these bloody labels. You know, for me, the world is controlled and humanity is controlled and controls itself and creates the very ground for which divide and rule is possible, which allows the few to control the many, through its obsession with labels. So we say, you're working class. Remember that great scene on the old David Frost program, where you had the three guys. John Cleese was one, and Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett were the others, and they were different sizes. And John Cleese was dressed as a rich man in the nice suit, and then you had Ronnie Barker, next one down. He was kind of middle class. In a trilby, and then you had Ronnie Corbett, little guy on the end, and he was kind of working class with the flat cap, you know, all the cliches, and it was a wonderful thing, describing the way that labels dictate our interaction, where one's saying, I look down on him because I am upper class, and then the guy in the middle was saying, and I look down on him because he is lower class, and we both look upon him because he's upper class. And these labels, labels of race, labels of sexuality, labels of religion, and these are not who we are. They are experiences that our consciousness is having, our awareness is having. And once you start self-identifying with the label, you start looking at yourself in terms of little me. I am my label. I am Ethel, who works on the checkout at Tesco. That's all I am. No, you are an expression of infinite awareness, having an experience called Ethel on the checkout. You know, Bill driving the bus. You know, you say to people, who are you? That you say, well, I'm Bill. I come from Manchester and I drive a bus. No, that's what you're experiencing. Bill is the name of your current experience. What you are is consciousness having that experience. And this might seem like esotericism, but it's not. It's a totally different way of interacting with the world, and it's a total different way of self-identifying yourself. Because
do you know what? I'm glad I was messing around there. I'm glad because I realized I didn't add myself to the bloody thing. So anyway, so he was talking about a sketch with Ronnie Corbett and a few other guys. So I'm going to show you the sketch. Now, he's thrown me a bit because I don't quite understand why he's brought this sketch into it. It's a very simple sketch. It's nothing intellectual. And I think it was meant to be funny at the time. So let's have a look.
I am a master criminal. I am an average criminal. I'm the one that gets caught. I indulge in crime because it is my way of breaking the rules and strictures of society. I indulge in crime because of the crippling economic system we suffer from. I'm just dishonest. I manipulate government funds, make a few trips to the continent, do some secret currency deals, and a handsome profit comes out. I put a few false signatures on a few false checks, and a new house or car comes out.
I put a dud coin in a cigarette machine and the manager comes out.
I have a villa in France and several mistresses. I keep a blonde in a West End flat.
I don't even fancy my probation officer.
I am known as the boss, the big man, and the brains. I am known as Major Scott, Captain Fortescue, Squadron Leader Scott Fortescue, Rear Admiral Fortescue Scott, and Sir Fortescue Scott Fortescue.
I'm known as Handbag Harry.
We all indulge in crime, but what do we get out of it? I've got the satisfaction of knowing that I'm smarter than the man next to me. I've got the superior feeling of a life of luxury without working for it.
I've got his wallet and wristwatch.
I think it was meant to be funny at the time. Hang on, I want to see if I can find For Yorkshireman sketch. John Cleese. Why do these Americans keep wanting to make videos reacting to British people? I don't understand. It doesn't look like they've got the one. Forest report on youth. No. No, let's see. On class, we put that on because I think it's John Cleese class sketch. All right. 3 classes in the UK family. No, that ain't it. That's not it. British Americans react to John Cleese and the 2 Ronnies. Yeah, all right then. One of the I Know My Place sketches. John Cleese and his friends hacked off. No, that doesn't look like it's here. This damn sketch he was talking about. What's this one though?
We've been researching once again into the upper, middle and lower classes with regards to various aspects of modern living in Britain. Tonight we have representatives of the 3 classes in the studio to report on family life.
I have 3 children, Jeremy, Alison and Jane. My wife and I have been married for 8 years.
I have 2 children, Derek and Doreen. My wife and I have been married for 6 years.
I have 8 children. Peter, Rita, Anita, Sandra, Dawn, Clint, Rock and Elvis. My wife and I are not married.
My wife is on several committees, runs the local opera group and is secretary of the Bridge Club.
My wife is a member of the Mothers Union, enjoys organising coffee mornings and is a driver for Meals on Wheels.
My wife is pregnant again.
We give dinner parties 2 or 3 times a week. This enables us to keep in touch with our wide circle of friends.
We give a wine and cheese do once a month. This enables us to do it on the cheap.
Her mother comes round Saturday nights and drinks my Guinness. This enables her to get drunk for nothing.
We stopped having children when we decided that we had the ideal-sized family unit.
We stopped having children when the school meals went up.
We stopped having children when we found out what was causing it.
We employ a housekeeper, a chauffeur, a gardener, and a cleaning woman.
My wife has a woman who comes in 3 times a week and a babysitter in the evenings.
My wife has a babysitter, a cook, someone to clean the house at the weekends, and a washer up. And I'm bleeding exhausted.
3 family units, each of a different class. But are our opinions of marriage really so different?
I get the feeling that marriage only works provided it strengthens the freedom of the individual.
My trouble is I get the feeling that marriage tends to tie me down.
My trouble is I get the feeling too often.
Yeah. You can see what they're basically saying. You know, it's quite obvious that pleases the upper class. Ronnie Barker, middle class, and poor old little Ronnie Corbett there, lower class. May have worked back then. I don't think it would work today. No, I just don't see those little clips working today. So what we will do, we will go back to the main event, which is, of course, the wonderful, wonderful words of David Icke. So let's get going.
When you say I am art and the labels then follow, you are self-identifying with limitation. You're self-identifying, I am my experience. And if I'm, born in Leicester in a working class council house, then that defines me. That's who I am. No, that's just where you were born. Mm. You have the potential to be whatever you want to be and whatever you choose to be. But what we've got now is a massive extension even of that, whereby your label is everything. Not only are people defining themselves by the labels, the world is increasingly defining them more than ever before by them. And this is where what we call today identity politics comes from, where it's not about what is right or fair or just, which is surely the way to look at anything. It's how does this affect my label? So if I'm transgender and something happens, how does this affect my label? If I'm this race or that religion and something happens, well, how does this affect my label? So people are constantly judging the world by how it affects their label, instead of saying, well, hold on a minute, never mind all that. Is it right? Is it fair? Is it just? No matter what label we're talking about, is it fair? Is it just? Is it right? And so what you have is a situation where we have developed this belief among increasing numbers of people, particularly young people through the universities and colleges, whereby you judge everyone by a group, and then you tag the group, whether it's good or not good. So therefore, instead of seeing a world of individuals with individual thoughts, opinions, observations, you judge everyone by a group. So if you say something about one group, you're a bigot, you're a Nazi, and a racist or a fascist. And if you say something about another group, then, and that group is labeled bad, then you say what you bloody like.
Yeah, but we spoke about that earlier, David. If people are divided from religion, from race, they're easier to control. The masses are easier to control because everybody's fighting and arguing whose beliefs are right. And for me personally, we're all equal. We all deserve a chance. And to set limits on yourself, you're crazy, because everything is limitless. You're the one who can control and take whatever you want to do out of life. When you started your journey, David, obviously you went through the Terry Wogan show, which was massive for you, because you came on that show and you spoke out how you believed in and the things that you seen and the things you were educating yourself with, because you always say they ridiculed you, which I believe it's sad when you watch that interview. When you were going on that, did you know that was going to be the outcome?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. People said to me, didn't you know that would happen if you said this and said that? And I said, well, do you know I'd worked that out? Mm-hmm. But you say it anyway. But you see, there's a lot of background with that, because I was going through my life. I left school at 15. I didn't take a major exam because I went to be a professional footballer with Coventry and others. And then my career ended with rheumatoid arthritis. I played a whole year of league football with rheumatoid arthritis. That's the whole story in itself. But what that did is it developed in you, because all these things are within us, and experience brings them out. And if you don't have experience, often they don't come out. So I have this phrase, life tends to give us our greatest gifts, brilliantly disguised as our worst nightmares. Mm. Because often our worst nightmare will bring things out of us that wouldn't otherwise happen. This is why if you bring your kids up and you protect them from everything, you're doing them no favors, because you're not developing strong people who will be able to deal with life. You're developing people who are always looking to be protected. And look at what we have now. And once you have a generation or you have a population that wants to be protected and perceives itself all the time as being a victim, where does the point of power move? It moves to authority, because people look to authority to protect them from what they fear or what they feel victimized by. So what we've been developing is a population of emotionally weak people who perceive themselves in terms of victims. When you have challenges in life and you meet them, it brings something out of you. So, for instance, when my arthritis came, and I didn't know what else am I going to do at that time. I wanted to be a footballer. I wanted to be a footballer since I was a kid, and now my joints are swelling up, and they're telling me I'm going to have to pack it in. Now I thought, I'm not packing it in. I want to give it a go. So I went to a club called Hereford United that was a league club then. And I played the whole season with rheumatoid arthritis. Every morning when we were training and warming up for training on cold English mornings, I was in agony. And I would be limping and what have you. And the players would say, "Oh, what's wrong now, Icke?" And I would give a different excuse. "Oh, got a bit of a pull. Oh, I think I've got a bit of a blister." But actually, it was the same thing all the time. And I played the season out, and eventually it got so bad that I couldn't carry on. But it brought something out of me, this determination not to give up and not to give in. And then I decided, because when I was a kid, I was always reading newspapers and was very interested in journalism. So I became a journalist, and long story short, I eventually became a television presenter.
Well, very well known back then.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was a national television presenter in those days. And when I look at my life now, you see, and what I'm doing, my life before, which appeared to be a series of random events, same with you. You've had your challenges in life. What has it done? It's made you the person you are. You wouldn't be the person you are now without them. Mm-hmm. And people say, "Well, I regret that. I regret that." Well, the thing to regret is if you don't learn from the experience. That's the regret. But learning from the experience, well, you've had a gift. What are you regretting for? And so I went into journalism because I was very interested in that. And I eventually became this television presenter. And when you look at my life, as I was saying, all the different elements of it, including going into journalism and seeing the media for what it is, going into politics with the Green Party and seeing politics for what it is. Well, I didn't know at the time, but they were all giving me very, very important understandings that would be useful later on. And then what happened is, this is a kind of bizarre story, but
I mean, what he's talking about, labels and everything, we all know about. I don't know why he's even spoke about that. He's very dumbed down at the moment. So what I'm going to show you is the Terry Wogan, interview. I mean, you make your own minds up about it, but this was a Terry Wogan interview when Icke first decided that he would let the people know that he was quite special. So here we go.
Evil has been in control of the planet for 12,000 years.
It has been the dominating force.
Was it a great shock for you to discover this at 38?
Well, I think
Actually, when I see that again, I'm slightly embarrassed by it. David Icke believes what he believes, however silly we may think it.
So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no, it's
But just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
I shouldn't have done that. I'm not proud of that. I always knew when an interview went well and when it didn't, obviously. But you couldn't dwell on it.
I mean, it's a very short clip. Why is that clip so damn short? Not having that. There must be a longer clip of when Icke decided Wogan's last. David Icke. What's this? Wogan is interviews David Icke. Terry Wogan. Terry Wogan. I like Terry Wogan, actually. I don't know why he feels ashamed, because Icke asked for it, kind of thing. Ah, here it is. So let's get ready. And what you've got to remember is, at this time, right, 1991, Terry Wogan was the it guy, if you know what I mean. You know, he was on everything. Radio, television. You couldn't turn around without Terry Wogan being there, kind of thing. He was the one who kick-started that Pudsey thing, Children in Need, is it called? Yeah, it was him that started that. I mean, you literally couldn't go anywhere without Terry Wogan being. It seemed he was always on the TV screens, and he was definitely always on the radio. First Radio 1, and then Radio 2. So for David Icke to decide he was gonna kind of come out and say the nonsensical stuff he said, I mean, you just heard Mr. Wogan say that he felt embarrassed by it, but probably because he, as a professional interviewer, he probably thought he shouldn't have really said what he'd said. But when you see the context of what David Icke was saying, remember, David Icke was a football pundit at the time. He was known to people on a program called Grandstand. He was a bloody football pundit. He used to sit there giving his opinion on football. Then he decides to come out and say this kind of stuff.
You're all in the turquoise is the colour.
But the Earth is going to go through a series of geological changes that are necessary to make sure it doesn't end. That's the point.
Yeah. Did I see you say that turquoise is the colour? What's turquoise going to do?
Well, there is an energy that comes from a Godhead, which is, I mean, we talk about God, the massive spirit, the basis of all creation. And coming out from this Godhead, round all creation, through all the stars, through all the planets and everything else, is the life force known as the light. I mean, the Bible refers to the light. And within this light are various other energies which have certain gifts. And these other energies have a frequency that is the same as all the colors. And turquoise actually is the same frequency as an energy called love and wisdom. Therefore, when you wear that color, you attract it. When you wear black, you attract a color that is the opposite to love. And
so from what I'm listening here, apart from the line he said where the Godhead, he's talking about the basic law of attraction, isn't he? You know, the law of attraction. But he also brought in Godheads. I mean, what he's talking about there, I don't know. And I don't think Terry Wogan knew at this point either.
And all the things we wish to bring to the earth.
But
And it
this
attracts another kind of energy, which is very.
But this is very hard.
imbalancing.
This is very hard on priests and nuns, isn't it?
Well, maybe that's a sign that maybe all the truth is not in the hands of the traditional church that has been with us over all these thousands of years.
Well, now, let me get this story right. The press claim that you claim to be the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Yes, you see, the thing is that you see, it's quite funny, really. You know, 2,000 years ago, had a guy called Jesus sat here.
So not only did he come out talking about Godheads, he now proclaims he's the Son of God. And now he's coming out with a story that if Jesus had been sat there, no one would have believed Jesus, kind of thing, just like they didn't believe Jesus. But we've moved on since then, right? We've moved on since then. So there's a lot of ways in which Icke could have, if he thought he was the Son of God, there are a lot of ways in which he could have proved such a thing. But I've never seen him prove it. Never.
And said these same things, you would still be laughing. It's really, really funny that we've not really moved on that much. There have been many missions, if you like, over the last 12,000 years to try to free the earth from control by a force that is working against the Godhead. The Godhead is the basis of all love and wisdom and all the rest of it in the whole of creation. But there is another being, the Bible refers to it as Satan, the real name is Lucifer, who is trying to take over creation. And because of the very important part this particular planet plays in the whole, actually destroying this planet would be a major step forward in that direction. Therefore, for the last 12,000 years, the influence on this planet has been from this being and from the energy which he sends out. And it's an energy that stimulates people to think in a certain way. So we hate, we are aggressive, we have no forgiveness, we have no tolerance. And I ask the audience this, when you survey the world today, you know, when a child dies in this world of preventable disease every 2 seconds, when the economic system of the world must destroy the earth simply for that system to survive, when you see all the wars and when you see all the pain and when you see all the suffering, is it a force of love and wisdom and tolerance that is in control of this planet? Or is it a force that wishes to bring about the very hate, the very aggression, the very suffering? Because the key thing to get over, Terry, is this.
You see, as I've always said, David Icke is a brilliant storyteller. Now, that little passage there that he just came out with, you weren't going to get no laughter from the audience because he mentioned children dying. That's why he mentioned that first, because that would shut anybody up, and they weren't going to be laughing at that. That's why he did it. He's very good at taking a story and spinning it to his own beliefs. I mean, where he came up with these beliefs, I don't know. We've already recognized the belief of law of attraction. There's a lot of people that do actually believe in that, you know. Noel Edmonds is one, isn't he? He writes silly numbers on his arms every now and then. That game, Deal or No Deal, it's all based on the law of attraction. Like, which number are you attracted to? Which is the powerful number that you're attracted to? Where you will open that box and think that box is going to hold something that's life-changing, because it's down to the basic, like I keep saying, law of attraction. Anyway, let's keep going on here.
When we think, it is not a vacuum. When we think, we create an energy field. This is how telepathy works. An energy field leaves one being, and other beings can tune into it and read that thought. When you think thoughts of love and wisdom and of tolerance and all the things we wish to bring to the earth, you create a certain kind of thought energy, the very same energy that the Godhead sends around creation. When you think the other thoughts of hatred, of anger, of aggression, you create a different kind of energy known as negativity, which is very, very destructive. This being called Lucifer lives off this energy. So the more that is produced on this planet, the more powerful that being becomes. Therefore, he stimulates and has stimulated this planet over 12,000 years since he's been in control to produce as much of this energy as possible.
So evil has been in control of the planet for 12,000 years.
It has been the dominating force. Evil's not the right word. It is imbalance. But it has been increasingly in control. As I repeat, survey the world, ladies and gentlemen. Is the force of love in control of this world, guiding this planet at this time? Of course not. The negativity, the thoughts that I'm talking about that are very destructive, are pouring out of this planet
Let me
every
interrupt
day.
you. Was it a great shock for you to discover this at 38?
Well, I think the word is gobsmacked. But again, you know, the best way of removing negativity is to laugh and be joyous. So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
I didn't mean that to be hurtful. I don't want you to misinterpret it. They're not laughing in sympathy with you.
No, let me say two things to that. First of all, if anyone believes after 12,000 years of this truth being lost and forgotten, that coming out with it initially is going to get any kind of reaction other than that one or condemnation, then I would be a crackpot if I thought that was the case. The other thing is, there is this great illusion, you know, that Jesus was born and stood up and said, I know who I am. It was revealed to him in stages. He was very, very close to beginning the mission, which is described in the Bible, but not described brilliantly accurately, before he knew who he was. And when he came out, Terry, and said, I am the Son of God, I am an aspect of the soul of the Godhead incarnate because of things that need to be done on this planet urgently, people laughed, people ridiculed. And in the end, you know, they crucified him because the intolerance on the planet at that time was so great that if someone else in the traditional church says...
See what I mean about taking a story? He's took a simple story there of when Jesus Christ stood up and said he was the Son of God. And he's doing a great job of spinning that story to make himself look good. I don't know if others can see this, but I can see it. It's all about making what he believes, which to me seems to be the simple law of attraction at the moment. I don't know who this Godhead is. I really don't. That's where he's confusing me a bit. But yeah, at the moment, he's in the spin factor of spinning the story and getting people to believe it. When the audience were laughing at him, he dealt with it in a good way. He dealt with it by turning it, spinning it back onto the audience, which made the audience feel a bit silly, I suspect. Because that's what Icke does.
We have one life, and we are judged on that one life on earth by a judgmental God on whether we go to heaven or hell forever. We are judged, some of us, on 90 years, and some on a life that lasts a few minutes before babies die after being born. Some are judged on having perfect physical bodies and being millionaires. Others are judged on one lifetime racked with disabled bodies. If I said that, people say, okay, fair enough. We either believe that or we don't. But people don't actually laugh. But when you come out with an alternative view, suddenly it's very funny. I find the version of life that I've just described extremely funny in comparison. But they have people who believe that and expound that view, have every right in the world to have that view and expound it. I'm tolerant of them. I ask people to be tolerant of another view.
Well, now, this is not entirely unreasonable. But there are a couple of questions. First of all, why you? And secondly, if I may say so, you have confused the message by an awful lot of predictions. You've told us that there are going to be earthquakes, and some of them going to happen quite soon.
Yeah. Well, two things to that. First of all, why me? Well, why anybody? I mean, people would have said to Jesus, and many other people like Jesus that have not been written into history. I mean, that was the most famous effort of this kind to wrest control of this planet from these forces. But there have been many before that. They would have said, "Why you? You're a carpenter's son, for goodness sake. Who the heck are you?" So that's
so yeah.
So why anybody?
You're saying you were part of Jesus' soul before.
Precisely.
You're also part of many other people's lives on the way through
As
history.
we all have been. We've all been on this earth and incarnated into different physical bodies many times. It's called reincarnation. But the other point you bring up about the predictions.
Yes.
If I am given information from beings who have proved to be perfectly accurate day after day after day, and things they've told us are going to happen, and they happen.
They told you Saddam Hussein was dead, and he's
That's
not.
right. Yes, he is.
Well, I watched his birthday party on the television yesterday.
All I can say to you is, all that glitters is not gold. Hang about and watch and wait. But I'll say two things to watch
Well,
for.
he was wrong on that one, wasn't he? Because this was 1991, so that would have been the time of Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. Saddam Hussein was not killed during the first Gulf War. We toddle along to 2003, right? And there's Saddam Hussein, as large as life, with his sons, fucking Uday and fucking Wuzay, or whatever they're called, right? So that prediction was wrong. You got that totally wrong, Mr. Icke.
And let the alarm bells go if they happen. One is if they suddenly announce he is dead now, therefore they don't have to explain the past and what's happened over the last few weeks and the fact that he's been dead for many weeks. And secondly, if they say we've done a deal, he's gone into exile, and part of the deal is not to name the country he has gone to, therefore disappear Saddam, let the alarm bells ring.
But those two things are likely to happen, and you will be saying, "Oh, well, he's been dead for some time." But we saw him on the television yesterday, celebrating his birthday.
All that glitters is not gold. Just hang about and wait.
I see. Now, what about eruption? When may we expect tidal waves, eruptions, earthquakes?
Well, because of the nature of the way the Earth has been treated over a long period of time, a tremendous amount of energy has built up within the Earth that cannot get out. If it doesn't get out, bang. So this is going to be released in a controlled manner, as controlled as possible, through earthquakes, through volcanoes and such like. If they don't happen, this is not punishment. If they don't happen, there is no Earth. Because of the way the Earth's been treated, the Earth is also extremely, extremely weak. And it's in the situation now where it cannot function by itself as an independent entity. It is in effect on a life support machine already. Now, the question is, it's a bit like a patient where they say the patient needs this operation to survive, but is the patient strong enough to take the operation? And that is the point that the Earth is at now. When these things happen...
As they will,
my goodness, they will.
When is the first thing going to happen?
Well, it will certainly happen this year. The first sequence will begin this year. The question is, that they are making before it starts is the Earth yet strong enough to survive these changes?
Why should we believe you if we have trained, highly intelligent, erudite scientists who tell us that none of these things are going to happen? Why should we believe you?
Well, first of all, two things to that. First of all, the same kind of erudite scientists, but highly intelligent, once said the Earth was flat. And the people that said the Earth was round were laughed at. And the same thing's happening now. The second thing is, I am asking no one in this theater, no one watching this program, no one on this planet to believe a word of it.
But why are you saying it then?
Because the fundamental law of creation is that of free will. To be given opportunities to make decisions and choices based on information.
If you could give us some kind of proof, anybody can get up and say these things are going to happen because they've been divinely inspired. And lots of people have done it in the past. In the year 1000, we had all these people coming up saying that the world is going to end. And lots of people ran at the top of the mountains, as they have been doing.
I'm not saying the world's going to
years.
end. I'm saying it could.
But they're saying all sorts. Yes, well, these people probably said the same thing. Nothing happened, and they said, it's because of the power of my prayers that saved. Is this what you're going to do?
No, some of these things are not They are the consequence of 12,000 years of human free will choice and behavior. Therefore, many of them are unstoppable. And I'm not going to stand up and say, well, they're not happening because of what I've done. Some of them are going to happen. And I'm not asking anyone to believe it. But you see, if the traditional
But
church...
then there's no point in you saying
But
it.
of course not. You see, why should I impose...
Did you just agree with me?
Why should I impose my will? Why should I try to impose what I'm saying on anyone? They have the right to listen to what I'm saying,
but if you
to listen to what the traditional
if you don't
church
give
is
them
saying.
any kind of proof, if you don't give them any reason to believe in you, they will dismiss you as a crank, which is what they're doing.
Well, that's their free will choice. But Terry,
That's
if
just
I
an
am
easy
saying,
upturn.
if I am saying that these things are going to happen this year, then we'll see, won't we?
And what'll happen if they don't happen? What'll happen to you?
They will happen, because if they don't happen, there will be no earth. And it's as simple as that. And I frankly don't care what anyone thinks. They have free will to make their own choices on what is said. I say wait and see.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Icke.
Thank you.
I'm a bit confused there, because he didn't make it clear, tidal waves and earthquakes. Did he mean in Great Britain? Because if he meant in Great Britain, it never happened. Obviously, if he's talking worldwide, I mean, tidal waves and earthquakes in other countries. I mean, America, for one, earthquakes, San Francisco, always having earthquakes. So that was a bit of a stupid thing to be saying. There's going to be earthquakes and tidal waves because, well, yeah, there's been earthquakes worldwide and tidal waves for thousands of years. But if he was talking about just the UK, and I think maybe he was, well, he's a crank, as Terry said, good old Terry said. But that was the first time that Icke decided to come on the TV and give us his view on everything. And he talks about the Godhead and that he's the son of Christ, of God, sorry. He's the son of God. And earthquakes and tidal waves, which were happening anyway. And Saddam Hussein apparently was dead. And we know he wasn't because of what happened in 2003 and when he was actually killed. So, the whole interview really was non-constructive because nothing he said was right. And he wasn't very clear on the earthquakes and tidal waves thing. I mean, you've only got to think back to 2007 with the tsunami that was in that, I can't remember the country now, Malaysia or somewhere, on Boxing Day. And that tsunami, actually, that happened that day, I think it was Malaysia. It was one of those countries. I can't remember which country it was. It actually stopped a lot of Christians believing in Jesus Christ, God, and all the rest of it. Did you know? I don't know if people knew that. It was so horrific that a lot of people thought, well, what kind of God would allow this to happen? And yeah, a lot of people turned away from their faith. But this man, what he's just come out with is absolute, rubbish. Because I could sit here now and say, yeah, there's going to be tidal waves and earthquakes around the world. And you'd think, yeah, there always is, so no. But I wanted you to see that because now we're rolling on a few years later, well, a lot of years later, and we've got Mr. Icke sitting in another studio, haven't we? Talking in this manner about labels and things like that. I mean, I don't know if he's proclaimed to say that he's the son of God ever again. I'm not quite sure, but I do find the way he seems to have matured in his outlook.
Everywhere. Good. You are a that race label. You are a that race label. No, doesn't matter if you're black, white, just for experience. transitory experiences. Do you think we are Muslim or black or white or Hindu when we leave the body? Of course not. These are belief systems within this tiny band of frequency we call the world. And because we self-identify with them instead of just enjoying them, you know, I like being
wait a minute, right? So he's just dismissed every religion there, because there will be Muslims and Hindus and Christians who believe that when they leave this planet, they will still be Muslim, Hindus, and Christians. You see, you've got to watch out for Icke. He's a little storyteller that will come out with stuff and people miss it. So he's just dismissed all faiths. So obviously this guy who claims he's the son of God can't be religious, because if he was, he wouldn't be dismissing every faith the way he has, because a lot of people live their lives by their faith, ready for the day when they die, and they truly believe in their faith. So I think that was a bit underhanded what he did there.
Muslim. I like being a white guy. I like being a black guy. Okay, fine. It's an experience. Enjoy. But don't think it's you, because once you think your labels are you, bang. And so what transformed my life is when I started to understand this, and I started to self-identify, not with David Icke as who I am, but as what I'm experiencing. But what I am is consciousness having the experience. That's what's leaving the body at what we call a near-death experience. When people leave the body, they've got no eyes, but they can still see. They've got no brain, but they can still think. It's because they are consciousness, and consciousness has the ability to hear, think, everything. But the body, what the body does, you think of consciousness. Consciousness does not, if you like, vibrate. It's not within the frequency band of this reality we're experiencing. So it's like radio 1, radio 2, radio 3 or 4 are all sharing the same space, but they don't interfere with each other. Why? Because they're not on the same frequency. So consciousness is not in the range of frequency that we are directly experiencing in what we call the physical world. So to experience this band of frequency, this reality, our consciousness takes on what we call an external form, which is operating within the frequency band of this world. And because of that, I can pick that glass up. My consciousness could not pick that glass up because it's on a completely different frequency to the glass. But operating through this outer shell, what I call a biological computer, it can pick the glass up because there are compatible frequencies.
Do you think there's other species on this planet? Because you've spoke about that quite a lot. You've wrote over 20 books. Do you think there's other people walking among us as well?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, let's put this again into context. According to mainstream science, if you compare the size of planet Earth with the projected size of the universe, planet Earth is the equivalent of a billionth of a pinhead. So if you say that life as we know it only exists on a billionth of a pinhead within the greater reality, you are, well, that's credible. You could be an academic saying that, but you say, actually, hold on a minute. Elephant, living room, sofa, billionth of a pinhead, night sky, which is a tiny fraction even of one galaxy, and there's billions of galaxies in the universe, they say now. Despite all that, life is. I'm having a problem.
That microphone's getting
we're going to fall out, Mike. But we're saying that life as we know it only exists on a billionth of a pinhead and nowhere else. I mean, it's insanity. And then you think this. Look at the vastness of different forms that exist in animals, in insects, in nature, in all of it, even in the human race. Look at someone from China or someone from Asia and someone from South America, from South Africa, from Europe. Look at the differences. you look at the range of form, of different form and expressions of form that exist within a smear of 0.005% of the universe. What the heck in the infinity beyond this reality, which is in almost the entirety of everything, what the heck exists out there in terms of form, and different expressions of consciousness?
How do we know what's out there, David? See, I'm a man who questions everything. Unless I see it with my own eyes, I struggle to believe it. And people say, oh, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. And we touched on it earlier. Everything's a conspiracy, because unless you see it with your own eyes, or everything, it's the way you perceive things, or your perception. How do we actually know what's out there? How do we know we're not in a snow globe? How do we know the world's not flat or round? How do we know the answers?
Well, basically, you don't, in terms of, every I dotted and every T crossed. All you can do is put the information that you have across together and come to conclusions. That's all you can really do. But, when I'm talking about non-human races interacting with and manipulating human society, I've not sat in a darkened room and pulled it out the bloody ether, smoking a weed. I've been to more than 60 countries over 30 years researching this. I've talked to whistleblowers on the inside of the American military and intelligence complex, many of them. I've talked to shamans around the world who are carriers of the ancient knowledge of those societies. And when you put what the two say together, you get the same answer, that yes, there is a non-human force that is manipulating human society. And you see it in ancient accounts. You see the common themes around the world in different cultures describing the same thing. And you see one common theme, for instance, which is that this non-human force manipulated human genetics. This comes out in the Old Testament, for instance, as the sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men. People say, "Oh, that's in the Bible." Well, yes, it is, but the theme is everywhere in non-Bible countries galore, cultures galore. And so you put it all together and you come to conclusions. Then you write it down, you connect the dots, and then you.
I'm sorry, he's talking nonsense. I'm sorry. Everything he said is absolute nonsense. Yeah, the shaman might say that there's a spiritual force from so-and-so, but there's no actual proof. You're talking nonsense, Ike. I'm not falling for this at all.
Put it out, and then people decide whether they want to believe it or not. That's the deal. But when you look at how narrow the band is that we can see and perceive, my experience over the last 30 years says to me that's not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow human genetics has been manipulated to only perceive a very narrow band of reality, which makes us obviously far more controllable. And
you always talk about being controlled.
You see, now people who listen to people like Ike, this is where they come up with their nutty ideas. Yeah, and I'm thinking of quite a few people at the moment, with their crazy, crazy ideas. You must listen to people like Ike all the time, because I'm sitting here now and I'm just finding it hysterical what he's saying. I mean, to think this man makes a lot of money with his stories, he makes them up as he goes along. It's quite unbelievable. Yeah.
Talking about, you spoke about it years ago, David, about kids getting microchipped, and now we're getting microchipped where they can follow us about, and the Illuminati. Can you touch on that? The small percentage of the people who control the world?
Well, one of the things that, is a head shaker to me, and I smile to myself these days, is over the years, people have told me, authority is trying to tell me even more now, that I'm wrong. And because I'm wrong, I can't say what I'm saying and write what I'm writing. And then they prove me bloody right. I said back in the 90s, when I was producing the first books, that there was a plan for the world. And that plan included the destruction of freedom of speech and the creation of a centrally controlled global fascist, communist, Marxist, whatever you want to call it, state. They're all different terms for the same tyranny. That this included microchipping the population. Don't even start me on that. It's way along the line already. And that money would be taken out of circulation, so only cashless money digital money would be used, which has fundamental implications for freedom and control, and a stream of other things which have all come true. And the reason I could do that is very simple. How did Aldous Huxley in 1932 in his book Brave New World, how was he able to describe genetic, drug, and other things that in a dystopian way that is now happening? How could George Orwell be so accurate in 1948? What about the other people that I quote in my books, insiders way back, who were saying this is what's going to happen because this is the plan? And it's all happening in detail, not even theme, detail, because there is a plan, there is a script. And what I've done for the last 30 years is work to uncover what that is. And once you do, once you know what's planned, predicting the future is quite straightforward. That's why so many, I see my books from the 1990s read on the TV news every day now, in changes in society.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you take that one, right? Because it was George Orwell that first wrote, 1984. The book he wrote in 1984. No, sorry, the book he wrote called 1984. I'm not having you take credit for what Orwell did, right? Because we do live in an Orwellian world at the moment. And you had nothing to do with that, okay? You might have read 1984 and took some of it and thought, yeah, I believe that, and I believe that. But you didn't write it, Ike. George did. George Orwell wrote it. And the man was very, it's turned out that George Orwell was very precise and very right in what he wrote. And what you've done, Ike, is you've gone back through history of these men that wrote books, and the main man you've stuck with is George Orwell. And I'm not going to allow you to take credit for what Orwell predicted in that book, 1984. Not only did he predict it in 1984, he believed it. I mean, when you think about it, George Orwell came from a very high-class family. He was a very well-regarded individual kind of thing. He died alone. I think it was up in Scotland or down in Devon. I'm not quite sure which one it was, in a house with no electric, no nothing. He didn't want none of it because he believed in what he believed in. You, on the other hand, you try to make as much money as possible from what you believe in. Orwell didn't. Orwell didn't go around becoming a multimillionaire. And when he wrote his books, when he wrote his, there's another book about Wigan, The Pier in Wigan or something it's called. And that's very enlightening to read, because he's spot on again. And the 1984 book, we are literally seeing it being played out day by day. Everything that man wrote about in that book. And I'm not going to have you try and take credit for what Orwell said, because Orwell didn't try to become a multimillionaire from it. You did. You don't go and sit in the worst parts of England for months on end to try and experience how people have to live. Orwell did. You don't. What you like to do is go around giving talks from the knowledge you've gained from George Orwell and people like him, and you've turned it into a spin. You've turned it into a way of making money. That's what you've done. And I don't believe half of what you say. You talk absolute nonsense. You ramble on so that people get confused and remember a tiny little bit. But most of what you said in this interview up to now is absolute rubbish. Does not make sense. You went on the label bits. We all know about labels. You know, don't label me. Don't put me in that box. Don't say I'm this when I'm not. We've been doing that for years, so that's no new fantastic fucking thing that you brought out there.
It's because I have this phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know what the outcome is planned to be, then what happens in the world, in world events and data?
So if you know what the outcome is going to be, right? So you just said, you know the outcome of what different things are going to be. Why can't you do anything to change it? If you know the outcome is going to be bad of a certain thing, why can't you do anything to change it, Mr. Icke? How come you didn't see the outcome of 9/11? Oh, you can tell a good story about 9/11, and I actually blame you for all the conspiracy theories to do with 9/11. Because you do spin a good story about it. But how come you couldn't foresee the outcome? How millions of people would end up dying because of that one day? Because you couldn't, could you? You couldn't foresee the outcome. Not at the time. You could not foresee that outcome at that time. Oh, you can see it in hindsight, but not at the time. I'm sorry, Icke, you're a fraud.
Daily happenings appear to be random. They seem to have no pattern. They seem to have no rhyme and reason. They just happen. Or you blame them on something else. When you know what the outcome is planned to be, which is what I've been uncovering all these years, then you start to see that these apparently random events are not random at all. They are stepping stones towards the outcome. We talk about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is being systematically destroyed. And I'll give you the outcome on that. The outcome, desired outcome, is that there comes a point which we're moving towards so fast when no one will ever see or hear anything that is not acceptable to the authorities, to the system.
In other words, we become like communist China and countries like that. Well, I think most people living in Great Britain would be thinking that way anyway, would have a fear that that's the way we're going. So once again, you are not saying anything that's new, right? The outcome of free speech, we can see it over the horizon. So again, you're telling us what we already know. So it's took you quite a long time to get here, hasn't it? You didn't foresee it in 1990, in 1991. Why didn't you foresee it in 1991? You've only foreseen it with what's been going on. And we're all thinking like that. We all know that free speech is under danger, and that, you know, it is looking like we're going to end up in a country like communist China.
And we are seeing now daily freedom of speech and censorship being increased and increased and increased towards that desired outcome of deleting all information that the authorities don't want people to see. Now, what's been happening? The internet was actually created by this cabal. We can talk about that if you like, about why that was and where it's going. But one of the reasons is that they wanted to put all information eventually that people receive and where they get their information, thus their perceptions, which come from information received, that's what perceptions are, from the internet digitally. And the reason they want to do that is because once it's digital, then you can use algorithms to censor. You don't even need human input. Once the codes are in place, the algorithms, as they're doing now, will censor what people can see and hear. Now, what is freedom of speech? It's the freedom to speak. And if you have the freedom to speak, then you have the ability to challenge the prevailing narrative.
Yeah, but with social media and their algorithms, you don't have the freedom of speech anymore on that. But you know, in everyday life, you do have the freedom of speech still. There is no algorithm stood in the middle of fucking Parliament Square, is there? There is no algorithm outside my front door or in my house. If there was these algorithms everywhere, how come people can plot things? How come people can still murder, kill? How come violence is still happening? Surely to God, these algorithms would be able to pick up on all this and stop it. So what you're saying, Ike, just doesn't make sense.
Thus, you're never in a situation where people only see and hear what the authorities want you to see and hear. For that to be reached, that situation, free speech has to be deleted. Otherwise, they're not going to get there. That's why free speech is being deleted. And George Orwell had this concept of freedom, in effect, being the ability to say that 2 and 2 equals 4. Because while you have the right to say 2 and 2 equals 4, you have the right to freedom of speech. You have the right to speak factually and not be censored, even though you're speaking fact, but they're wrong facts from the authorities' point of view. And in 1984, in the book, society moved to a point where they were told they had to believe that 2 and 2 equaled 5. And you couldn't say 2 and 2 equaled 4 anymore. You had to believe that 2 and 2 equaled 5.
You know what I mean? He's picked a lot of stuff out of George Orwell's book. So, yeah, I mean, basically, you know, what he's talking about here is what is a woman? What is a man? We all know what he's talking about. You know, this 2 + 2 = 4. Does it? I mean, that's just whatever. But now, I mean, we have a prime minister that won't actually say what is a woman. Who is a woman? And you are censored on TikTok, you're censored on YouTube, but the censoring is only really bad on these social media platforms. In the reality of everyday life, the censoring isn't there. There's no censoring of the farmers at the moment. There never will be. Well, I think what this guy can only go as far as what George Orwell did. Because after George Orwell, he's stuck, isn't he? He's stuck in a parameter of George Orwell. When he's finished with Orwell, who's he going to move to next? That's going to be the next, which author who's written something very prolific, which author is he going to choose to copy then? And mix it up and make a story out of it.
Because that's what the authority wanted you to believe, so they got the outcome that they wanted. And what happens is that initially, and we're in that point now, when you're being pressured to believe 2 and 2 = 5 and to say it and not contradict it, there is a resistance which says, well, it's a load of bloody nonsense. 2 and 2 doesn't even equal 5. But when you then start giving people consequences for not accepting 2 and 2 = 5, abuse, losing your job, all the rest of it, marginalization, people then start, in search of self-respect, they don't want to accept that what they're doing is being kowtowed into saying 2 and 2 = 5 when they know it's 4. So they start to convince themselves 2 and 2 = 5. No. So it becomes not their...
No, nobody believes 2 and 2 = 5. I'm sorry, I'm not going to agree with you on that one. Nobody believes it. I don't know if you can lose your job for saying what a woman is. I don't know. I think you can lose your job if you are abusive towards someone that has transgendered into a woman. You know, fair enough. I don't know. I really don't care about all that but he obviously does. You can certainly lose your job if you're a member of a far right group. You don't seem to be able to lose your job if you're a member of a far left group. So he's missing out the part where a government has taken sides, kind of thing. So the far left can say what they want, the far right, no. You even act a little bit on the right, and the powers that be will come down on you. So you've got that all mixed up, haven't you, Mr. Icke? But as for 2 and 2 equals 5, you will never get anyone agreeing to 2 and 2 equals 5.
Enforce reality, eventually it becomes their perceived reality, and suddenly the world's gone frickin' mad. And that is absolutely the process that's happening now. What level of madness, mate, have we reached when professors of biology are being investigated by their universities and abused by students for saying that men and women are biologically different? Men and women are biologically different, okay? Men and women are biologically different. Another way of putting it, 2 and 2 equals 4.
No, I have to agree with them on that point. Yeah, if there's professors, scientists losing their jobs because they're saying that men and women are biologically different, that's wrong. And I mean, I can't see many people. I mean, there's a few people that will want to fall into that trap, and you've just got to feel pity for them. But normal, everyday working people who go to fucking work, who work in the city of London, are not going to be walking around going, oh, men and women are not biologically different. You've got to live in a certain rabbit hole for that. Yeah. Yeah, your mind has to be in a certain rabbit hole to believe that you could get arrested for saying that men and women are biologically different. That's why he's just said it 5 times, because he knows nothing's going to happen. He knows it. But these professors and everything, if that has been happening to them, well, I'm afraid it is madness.
But the so-called progressive, they're not at all. The fascistic, Marxist, whichever term you want to use, progressive, narcissistic stormtroopers of political correctness, Twitter stormtroopers, are insisting that you believe 2 and 2 equals 5. And it's a very simple thing. If you want something to happen, which, if you had an open debate, you couldn't win it, and therefore it couldn't happen, you simply don't have the debate. And I have a phrase. If you want to know and see the foundation elements of this agenda of human mass control, look at the subjects you cannot have another opinion about. Look at the subjects where if you have a different opinion to the official narrative, you're going to get abuse, ridicule, and other consequences. That's the agenda.
Tell us the subjects.
Simply for this reason.
Tell us.
If you can't win a debate on facts, and of course, men and women are not biologically different, it's not a debate you can win on facts, then you don't have the debate. You shout down, abuse people who have that. And we were talking beforehand. I posted something on my website today, which I saw this morning, where there's a meeting at a university in America, and there's speakers there. A woman well, she'd stand up, she's sitting down, but a woman spoke, one of the speakers, who was kind of an academic in her field. And she said, well, it's obviously that there are biological differences between men and women, because if you look at the facts, FACTS, I think that's spelt, people will forget that soon, then the vast majority of men are taller than women. Women have different have fat in different places. They have different muscular types.
No, you don't need to go through all that. All you need to remember is that women have babies and men can't. That's the biggest biological fact. So why he's bothering to go through all that, I don't know.
People in the audience started walking out. She's just saying the bloody obvious, and they're walking out. Why? She's saying 2 and 2 equals 4. They believe 2 and 2 equals 5, and they insist everyone else does. Cameraman follows them out, and they're out in the lobby saying that's fascist. We can't sit and...
Now, what he's saying here, I do believe what he's saying happened, right? And that's the scary thing, because what's happening is the people that are being educated today are believing this crap. What he's talking about, 2 and 2 equals 5. So these are going to be the up and coming generations that are going to end up ruling. You know, some of them are going to be like in high positions in this country, and they are going to believe that 2 and 2 equals 5, and that you can't say that men and women are biologically different. So pretty soon, the people who believe that I can see what he's getting at. The people who believe 2 and 2 equals 4 are going to have to be hiding in a fucking corner somewhere, whilst everyone who believes 2 and 2 equals 5 is jollying along whilst everyone believes them. So I can see where he's coming from there. And that's the worrying thing, that it's happening in universities. It's happening in places of education. Remember, the children of now are the people who are going to rule tomorrow. So it's pretty scary, isn't it, when you think about it? So I quite like his analogy of 2 and 2 equals 5. I quite like that.
Listen to that fascism. What? That men and women are biologically different? This is where we are going. And this is why it's so important that people are not intimidated into silence. Because I meet so many people who say, yeah, it's a load of nonsense, but you know, look what happens if you say so. And you know, one of my roles, if you like, is of being the kid pointing at the naked emperor while everyone's sycophantically hovering around saying, wonderful new clothes, emperor. Oh, what a lovely jacket. And I'm saying, hold on a minute. The guy's freaking naked. Got no bloody clothes on. What are you talking about? And that, of course, is 2 and 2 equals 4.
Do you think people are too scared now to speak out?
Well, they are. And it's systematic. It's being done systematically to shut people up. What is political correctness? I'll give it in a line. It's manipulating the target population to silence itself. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
And yeah, again, I've got to agree with him on that point, because I think we're all self-censoring ourselves since July. We've all been self-censoring ourselves, right? But Mr. Icke, if you're going to go forward in a positive way, you have to remain on this thing that you've said about 2 and 2 equals 5, when really 2 and 2 equals 4. If you stay on that projection, people like me who do ridicule you, I mean, I have ridiculed you in this stream, will start to listen to you and believe you more. It's when you go into the heady, fantastical fucking things that you like to say that I refuse to listen to anything you've got to say. But this I can agree with, because he's right. We are self-censoring on what we say, especially when it comes to a certain criminal case. I've never in my life known anything like it, that you can't talk about a certain criminal case publicly amongst yourselves, kind of thing. You're not allowed. Never heard of such a thing before.
False flag events, David, you've blew the whistle on a couple of them. What is a false flag event for people who don't know?
Well, one of the phrases I came up with that has now come into quite common parlance in the alternative media anyway, I came up with it in the 1990s, was problem, reaction, solution. This is so important. There's two mass manipulation techniques, because this is the bottom line. This conspiracy is a conspiracy to psychologically program the population. why do people behave the way they do? Why does someone behave that way and someone behave that way? Perception. That person's perception leads them to behave that way. This person's perception leads them to behave this way. And where does perception come from? Information received. People process information received, and they reach their perception. So if you can control information received, you control perception, you control behavior. This is what happens when you can.
All right, I'm with him up to now. All right, I haven't got a problem up to now.
Control information. And if you control it totally, which is where they're going, as I've just talked about, then you eventually control behavior totally, because you're controlling all perception. What problem reaction solution and its stablemate, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, are psychological manipulation techniques, and they're used on us all the time. Problem reaction solution. Other people call it false flag. You want to change the world in a certain way, and you know that if you stand up and openly say, this is what we're going to do, you're going to get a big resistance against it. People are going to say, we're not having that. What's going on? What are you doing that for? There's no reason. So what you do is you give them a reason. Stage one, you create a problem. Could be a terrorist attack. It could be a financial collapse. Could be a government collapse. Could be whatever. You then tell the population via an unquestioning and pathetic mainstream media the version of that problem you want them to believe. You name the villain, you name the reason for why that problem is happening, when you, in the shadows, have actually made it happen. At stage two of problem reaction solution, you want a reaction from the public of outrage, of fear, of whatever the reaction is required. And then you want them to, in effect, say, do something. Something must be done. And then those who've created the problem covertly and blame someone else and got you to believe it, then offer the solutions to the problems they've created. And they are solutions that push on this agenda for the world of more and more control, more and more centralization of power, more and more dictatorship. And they can make that happen with a solution to a manufactured problem that they couldn't have done without the problem. And so how much freedom has been taken away because of terrorist attacks? Well, what if not everyone, but what if many of those terrorist attacks were actually not what they appear to be, but were actually orchestrated by the very system that wants to change society? This create the problem, offer the solution is happening all the time.
Okay, what he says makes sense, right? The problem, reaction, solution. Yeah, I can go along with that. When he goes into terrorist attacks, right? No, I'm not. No. I'm not having that, right? The COVID thing, what do I think about that now? My biggest worry about what happened with the sea thing is that in the future, if there ever is, in the near future, say, because of what happened with the sea thing. And at the end of 2019 and whatever, my biggest fear is that in the near future, if something does come along that is very deadly, because there are things out there that are very, very deadly, deadly viruses, deadly diseases that can be caught, that people are going to have because of what happened in 2019 leading up to present day even kind of thing. And people are going to have this, no, we're not having it, we're not having it, we're not believing it. And for me, that's the biggest worry that I see from all of this. That something will come along that is real, that isn't conjured up by the powers that be, and work for some way in their illusion of what they think the world is. Because without us, really, they haven't got anything to rule, have they? If you look at it, so without that, you keep saying that, oh, it's all about control. Yes, but if the people they want, these higher up people want to control, are us, without us, they've got nothing to control. They would have no life themselves. So what is the fucking point? It doesn't make sense. But what does make sense to me is that what happened at the end of 2019 and up to present day will lead people into this don't believe you. When in fact, a real thing happened in 1918, and it spread so quickly. And you've got to remember that back then in 2018, there was barely radio, let alone TV. Let's remember, not 2018, in 1918, there was barely any kind of radio in everyone's house. There was no TV in everyone's house. We had newspapers, word of mouth. Travel was very difficult. You couldn't, I think the airplane was in its very early stages. Ships, you could travel by ship, and cars were in their very early stages too. So you've got to remember how this virus back in 1918 spread, and it managed to kill over 55 million people. Now, you're not going to tell me that was done digitally by the internet or anything else. It was 1918. But what I have noticed, right, is that the powers that be, no matter what movie you watch, and it's set in the First World War or the end of the First World War, the Spanish flu was rarely mentioned. There's only one TV program I've seen where they even go near the flu thing, the flu epidemic of 2019, which turned out, I think, sorry, I keep saying 2000, of 1918. And that was, believe it or not, Downton Abbey. They did a episode where it was all about that. And that's the first thing I've ever seen where it's the TV has actually shown that there was this big, I think it was swine flu in the end. So they've tried to cover it up over the years about the amount of people that died, but it did happen. And if something like similar to that comes along again, are people going to be so like non-compliant? That's not real. Yeah, this is my worry of the games that get played, And as for him with these terrorist attacks, no, I'm not having that. I'm not having that, because a terrorist attack kills. And I, for one, do not want to believe that my government is so evil that it would form its own terror attack on its own people just for a fucking, I don't know, to control the populace. I'm sorry, no. There's many other ways they can do that. They've already done it with the TV, the internet. I hear people on here saying, I don't watch a TV no more. No, but you're stuck on the internet. Do you not think they've got control of what goes on the internet? Because if they haven't now, they will within a very, very short time. So, I always, when the internet first came about, and as it grew, I remember thinking, oh my God, they've unleashed this thing with loads of information for stupid people. that was that's came true, because people can't take you get logical people that will take on board certain things, and then you'll get people who just love conspiracy theories like this man has, and they will go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, deeper than what Icke's ever done. They go further down and then start getting beliefs that are way out of whack. And that's what we're getting at the moment. Most people think if they don't watch a television, they don't listen to the radio, and they stick to social media, they're only getting the truth. No. I've seen gradually different things. Mertusi, I've seen him clickbaiting, right? I've seen him say things that I know are not bloody true, but he says they are, right? So who do you believe? I mean, just yesterday, Paul Thorpe and Richard, is it Richard? I always forget his name. The one who lives in Northern Ireland. Richard Inman. They did a stream where apparently we're all meant to get worried because Tommy Robinson is being harassed in prison over a tweet. Now, why are we meant to get worried over that? Because they're not telling us what the tweet is. They're not telling us in which way he's meant to be getting harassed. They just sat there telling us he's definitely getting harassed. It's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, no, this is too much. You got to stop this, right? It's just like weeks before, or last week, they were telling us how Tommy would come out and he'd be asked to meet Donald Trump. What planet are these people living? False hope, giving you false hope. I will predict what will happen when Tommy comes out of jail. And I don't care if you don't like it, right? What will happen? He'll come out and disappear. And I don't blame him. He'll disappear for months on end trying to get himself well, because he's not going to come out a well person. Now, anyone that doesn't like that, I say fucking tough. But also in the background, whilst he's disappeared, you will have the people that, yes, Tommy will be back soon. Tommy will be back soon. But Tommy's main aim when he comes out of jail is not going to be saving fucking Britain. You need to stop thinking like that. He's not Superman. His main aim will be to get himself, as normal as possible, and his family. I don't understand people that think his main aim is going to be to fly to America to a meeting that's never going to happen with Donald Trump. I don't get that, right? He's not Superman. And he's not as well known as these people seem to think he is as well. I mean, if I walked out my door now and knocked on my next door neighbour's door and said, have you heard of Tommy Robinson? They go, who? You see, we're all in this rabbit hole. We're all in this thing where we know of Tommy. But the majority of people do not know of who he is. And if they do, they only think he's a thug. So, when Tommy gets out of jail, or Stephen, shall I call him Stephen? When Stephen gets out, he's going to disappear. How long he disappears for, I don't know. But if you think for 1 minute he's going to be marching down the road doing anything other, you're mistaken. And if you fall for these idiots that have their own platforms that are telling you A, B, and C, Tommy for Prime Minister, Tommy's going to go and talk to the American president. You are fucking deluded. I'm sorry, but you are. And for you conspiracy theorists out there, and you support Tommy Robinson, but you're a conspiracy theorist, right? I just want to say this. I've heard a few conspiracy theories about the documentary Silenced, right? I refuse to believe them. But if I'm pushed, I will review Silenced, and I'll put all the conspiracy theories to it. Stop it. Stop pushing conspiracy theories on things you want to be conspiracy theories. Yeah? And also stop believing that when Tommy comes out, you know, he's going to be waving the St. George's flag and all the rest of it. No, he'll disappear. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him for one bit. Why should he? Why should he do anything other than that?
And that links in with something else I mentioned, the totalitarian tiptoe. You're at A and you want to take the world to Z. You know, if you go in too big a leap towards Z, the change is going to be so dramatic that people are going to look up from the game show or the sport and say, what's happening? So you go as far as you can, as fast as you can, but not so far that you alert too many people to the fact that there's a pattern here. And so you have a problem reaction solution and you take a step, deleting freedom, more surveillance, more control. Then you have another problem reaction solution and you do it more and you do it more and you do it more. If you look at the European Union, it's a classic totalitarian tiptoe. We were told we were joining a free trade area called the common market, good for jobs. Okay, that's where it starts. But that's not where it was planned to finish. That was just the foot in the door. And then you have more and more centralization of power. Well, if we centralize power, it would be more efficient. You know, over this and over that and all that stuff. And then it goes on and on and on until we've reached the point now where Europe is controlled in fine detail by a handful of bureaucrats that the vast majority of people in Europe couldn't even name. And I had to smile the other month. In my books in the 1990s, I said the plan is for a European army, an EU army. Oh, load of rubbish. We've got NATO. Ridiculous. Now, last few months, Merkel and in Germany and Macron in France, who are just puppets of this whole thing, like May and Trump and all of them, they've come out and said, we've had an idea. We've had an idea. We should have a European army. What do you mean you've had an idea? How did I know about it in 1993?
How much stuff have you said, David, that's came through? Does it scare you, the stuff that has come through, and go, I fucking told you so? Do you sit back and go, told yous?
No, I don't. What I do is I point out when things happen that I said them, but I don't way back. But I don't say, see, told you so. I do it for a reason, and this reason. If I knew about it 20, 30 years ago, it's not random, is it? Mm-hmm. It's not just happening. It's planned. Otherwise, I couldn't have known it. How could Orwell have known it? How could Huxley have known it? And these other people that I quote, how could they have?
You didn't know it. You took it from Orwell. Let's see if he tells us something he said that has actually happened. Right? I don't know if he said about the EU army in 1993. I don't know. I don't care, to be quite honest, because we do have NATO. And an EU army, and I think he's forgot we're not part of the European Union anymore.
Known it. How could someone I quote in the books, a Rockefeller, big-time Rockefeller insider, have described the internet that was coming in 1969? How could he have done that? How could he have said in 1969, we are going to make boys and girls the same? How would he have known that? Because there's a plan, and it's projected much further ahead than people
think the
realize.
Plan for the people controlling the world maybe are 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead.
Yeah, because it's another big story. Once you go off into another force that's not human, their timeline and their projections are not the same that we live in, where we, you know, if you're going down a river on a canoe, you see as far as the next turn in the river. But what if there's a force that can see the whole river, all from start to finish? Then they have a completely different timeline and a completely different ability to project the future. How did George Orwell know about smart TVs? Smart TVs, and we're only seeing Mark 1, 2, 3 at the moment, not where they're planned to go. They have cameras in them.
Right. So George Orwell was a prolific writer with a creative mind, you fool. And what I say happened is George Orwell didn't predict the future. George Orwell, with his creative mind and his prolific writing, wrote 1984. And then someone came along, read it themselves, someone in power, and thought, yeah, this would be a good blueprint for how we want the world to be. I don't think that George Orwell was some sort of bloke that could see into the fucking future. If that's right, I mean, let me see now. In what was I reading about John Wayne? John Wayne, the old actor, in 1960 something, he said pretty soon there's going to be pay-per-view TV, as in the boxing and everything else, right? Pay-for-view TV. You won't have to leave your homes, and it'll be pay-for-view. You can try and tell me that the old John Wayne, right, was some sort of bloke that could see into the future. No, you see these things in the industries that you're working in, and you can kind of predict them coming. You're not fooling me, Ike.
And microphones in them that can film you in your front room and record your conversations in your front room. Well, it's admitted. Somebody found them, and then they had to admit that it was true. In 1984, which came out in 1948, George Orwell was talking about in the 1984 society that there were telescreens in every home, and the telescreens were constantly filming you.
But Big Brother's watching.
Big Brother's watching. So, because it's projected long into the future, if you can access that, either because you're an insider or 30 years of bloody research full time, then you can predict the future. Because the simple thing is, if nothing intervenes to stop that process unfolding,
what we need to do, everyone needs to go and get a copy of George Orwell's 1984. Read it from beginning to end, and then start again. And you will see the pattern to which we are heading for. And you make your own plans and think, well, I'm either going to be part of it, or I want to duck out, and I want to go off grid. I don't want to be no part of it. What this man is saying is ludicrous. He's no, I'm not falling for this crap, what he's saying at the moment.
That will happen. So you can predict the future. The whole point of what I do is to alert enough people eventually to all these things that there is an intervention, and it is stopped, because a few people, and it is a few in full knowledge in the shadows, cannot manipulate and direct the lives of 7.7 billion because they don't have the numbers. To do it, they have to manipulate the perceptions of the population, which becomes the behavior of the population. Thus, the population behaves in a way that the few can control the many. And the key factor above all other factors is to keep that target population in complete ignorance of what you're doing. And so the more that you can uncover it and communicate it, and people become aware that this is happening, and thus events in the world are happening because of this and not randomly, the more chance there is of an intervention and the population saying, we're not having it.
The people you've spoke out against, David, are the most powerful people in the world. Do you ever get scared that they'll take away your life, that they'll put a hit out on you, or they'll try and shut you up? Because they've tried so many times to shut you up. They've now banned you from Australia. Yeah. Do you ever feel that, shit, I'm in danger here? Have you ever felt your life in danger from the higher powers and the people who control the world?
Never crosses my mind. No, I mean, that might be hard for people to believe, but it's true. It never crosses my mind. And for this reason, A, we're more powerful when we take our power back than ever we believe we are. And, I look on these people as pathetic little boys in short trousers, little boys and girls in short trousers, because what kind of psychopathic insanity does it take to want to impose your will over a vast population of people? I mean, it's pathetic. They are pathetic. I'm going to be frightened of them. Are you having a laugh? No way. And the other point is this: once you start self-identifying with being consciousness, that's my eternal state, your eternal state, everyone's eternal state, consciousness, a state of awareness. Well, whether it's in this body, it'll be out of this body eventually anyway at some point. Whether it's in this body or not in this body is almost irrelevant, because it's always a state of consciousness having an experience of some kind. So the worst that can happen to me is that I leave this body, right? And I will eventually anyway. I'm going to stay here forever, my God. I mean, you can have too much of a good thing, can't you? So it never crosses my mind. If you're taken out, you're taken out, but you're taken out trying to do the right thing. And
it takes courage.
Well,
do you think now, David?
Well, courage is overcoming fear, which is a really powerful thing. Courage overcoming fear. When you let go of fear, you don't need courage. You just do it. It's not like, if I say, I've just written a book, I just finished it. It's going to be probably the most controversial book, certainly given current times, probably going to be one of the most controversial books ever written. And so I know what's coming with it, but I don't fear it.
You're used to it.
I don't fear it because I'm putting out what I believe to be right. And I don't need courage to put it out, because I don't fear putting it out, because I don't fear the reaction. The reaction is what it is.
So you react to it?
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to read it and go, "Thank God, someone's saying it at last." And the system's going to say, "Ban him, condemn him." Couldn't get less.
Do you think they're doing the same thing with Jim Carrey now that they did with you 30 years ago? Try to ridicule him and call him crazy and say all the bad shit towards him because he's kind of had a spiritual awakening. He wants to stay away from the media and he's in the woods and just try to heal himself and get away from the false shit that he was involved in for so long.
Well, I spent an evening with Jim Carrey actually at his home with my son Jamie some years ago when I was in LA, and we had a very interesting chat. And again, Jim Carrey's had an experience similar to me, where basically the bubble popped and the veil lifted. And it can be a challenging time because suddenly you're perceiving another reality that's so different to the one you've been perceiving before. And of course, when you start talking about it, for reasons we've discussed, you're going to get ridiculed by the mainstream. The trick is not to care. And from what I've seen of Jim, he don't care. And, people just thought, look at the range of things you perceive. Is that really the limit of what there is to perceive? Is that really the limit of what there is to know, of ways of seeing the subjects you have views about? Well, of course not. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. Anybody's views are a tiny fraction of possibility. So why aren't we exploring all possibility? Not that you come across information and just because you come across it, oh, that's true, then I'll believe that now. No, you question it, you process it, you come to conclusions about it. But it's very simple, and history shows us this. Systematically reducing the amount of information, views, and diversity of information and views available to people never ends up well. It never turns out good. It always turns out bad for humanity, because you look at any tyranny, fascist tyranny, communist tyranny, whatever it is, whenever they get power, they want to destroy all alternative information and view that challenges what they want people to believe. Every time. So whenever you're in a situation where the free flow of information and view and opinion is being censored, you are in a tyranny. And what humanity has...
He's waffling now. So what I want to have a look at, because he's mentioned Jim Carrey, I want to see what Jim Carrey's been up to. I wasn't aware that Jim Carrey had changed at all. because Jim Carrey delivers powerful speech about Jesus, suffering and forgiveness. What suffering led me to Christ. I don't see nothing wrong with that. I don't know where this has come from. Let's have a look, shall we? What old Jim's been up to. I didn't realise that this guy had changed in any way. So that's new information for me, I guess. So let's see. Mr. Carrey, what have you been doing that people may ridicule you for, apparently?
And ultimately, I believe that suffering leads to salvation. That we have to somehow accept, not deny, but feel our suffering. And then we make one of two decisions. We either decide to go through the gate of resentment, which leads to vengeance, which leads to self-harm, which leads to harm to others, or we go through the gate of forgiveness, which leads to grace.
Up to now, no problem with that. And that's just Jim Carrey being spiritual. I haven't got a problem with that. So Jim Carrey, no one wants to hear one of the most eye-opening speeches. It was all a lie. Yeah, whatever. 7 months throwing himself down a large flight of stairs. Fear. See, this AI shit really starting to get on my nerves now. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's making videos with it. Why have they got to use it? All right, so this looks a bit more on. What's this? I'm sick and tired of secrets and lies. Jim Carrey was sickened by Will Smith's Oscar moment. Okay, so this guy, Jim Carrey, seems to have had a spiritual awakening. That's a big difference to what David Icke has had, you know, let's be honest. They ruined so many lives. It's all right saying that after you've made millions from it, isn't it? What does this life really mean, Jen? Let's have a look at this then.
And at a certain point, I realized, hey, wait a second, you know, if it's so easy to lose Jim Carrey, who the hell is Jim Carrey?
We don't matter.
I'm not looking backward.
Why don't we just...
It was more like you're supposed to say, you know, we're important. You're supposed to say it's all going to be all right. And you're supposed to say that, you know, whatever you dream can come true. And you're supposed to say all those things. I do believe in manifestation, power of that kind of stuff. But I don't believe that any of it matters. You know, this mattering is to me a human construct born out of a need, the same need as you have to have, you know, deities and things like that. And I believe in an energy of God, an energy of, you know, everything is divine. You know, there's just nothing.
Yeah, so what's happened with Jim Carrey, from what I can quickly pick up here, he's had a spiritual awakening where he says nothing matters. What he means by nothing matters, nothing material matters. That's what he's trying to say. I mean, there's people out there who think that going to university and getting a degree is a waste of time because that piece of paper does not matter. That degree does nothing material matters at all. And from what I can hear, that's all that Jim is saying. Now, because he's changed his look and he's now be more, you know, be crying Hollywood after he's made millions is quite hypocritical of him. But maybe he has had this awakening. We'll soon find out. If he gives his millions away, well, then we'll know he's had a true awakening. If he doesn't give his millions away, while I'm on that point, let's see if we can find anything that says he's give his money away. There's nothing to do but let go on. Oh, he's being depressed, right? Life happiness for you, the philosophy of Jim Carrey. No, he's just like had this spiritual awakening where he believes nothing matters, and nothing matters because he can afford everything. You see, this is what you have to remember. Nothing matters because anything that matters to me or you, well, he can afford, and it doesn't mean nothing, right? The tragic story of Jim Carrey, biographer, can't touch that. I will get a strike. Big pain behind the smile. Well, I'm not surprised with that. As in, I wasn't surprised when this man, Robin Williams, killed himself. Most comedians, most famous comedians are racked with depression in their off-stage life. You know, that's a fact. And when Robin Williams offed himself, I wasn't shocked, simply because I knew what goes on in the lives of these people who are famously funny on screen, but demonically depressed off screen. There's only one thing that Robin Williams said before he died that stayed with me, if you like, and I thought, yeah, I get that. He said to his wife, he felt he couldn't go on any longer because he's fearful and has fear of everything. You think on that, right? I've thought on that for hours on end about those words that he said to his wife. And once you think about it and you see what was going on in his life, you really do understand why this man was fearful of, I mean, literally everything. A knock at the door, anything would, inspire great fear into this guy. So yeah, that's just a bit of information about people who are incredibly funny like that. You know, they normally racked by depression. But as for Jim Carrey, I just see it that he's earned millions. He's had some sort of spiritual awakening, which isn't unusual at his age. He now sees that nothing is worth anything, and the only thing worth anything is his spirituality, as he's backed by millions and millions of dollars, which I haven't seen anything that tells me he's given away these millions of dollars. We see it's too late. Robin Williams on the fragility. You see, there's one guy. Robin Williams. I mean, here we go. Look. Carrey with his law of attraction. Jim Carrey. I'm not maligning Carrey for this. No. What I'm looking to see if he truly has had a spiritual awakening, because if he has, none of the millions he's got should matter, right? None of them, none of the movies he's made, none of the millions. He should just shut up about it, because it doesn't matter. He should go away into the ether and live his spiritual life, and we don't want to hear about it, because then I'll believe him. Until then, I won't believe him. Oh dear. But as for Mr. Icke, no. Some things I agree with him. Some things I can see the sense. I can see the rationality. Other things he just wobbles on and on and on and on and doesn't fucking shut up till you forget what point he was meant to be making. And he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that by accident. He does it deliberately. He knows what he's doing. Well, if I ramble on long enough, they're going to forget what the question is I was meant to be asking. And that's exactly what he does do. Yeah, so I thought I'd just give you a little insight into what my feelings on David Icke, because I do feel that there's a lot of conspiracy theories going around, and they seem to be put around by the most ridiculous, unstable, stupid individuals that I've ever come across. And Nixie being one of them, the woman that can't have a debate but can scream and shout abuse but can't actually have a debate. But David Icke kind of annoys me. He annoys me because he claims, oh, I had this insight and I had that insight and I'm so fucking clever. Well, if he's so clever, why couldn't he stop things from happening? How come the government doesn't listen to him? If everything he says is so true, right? Why does the government not listen to him? I don't understand that about Icke. I have watched, I think I've said before, I've watched his story time, Jack and Nori documentary about 9/11. And if you're not strong-minded and if you're not strong-minded and you're weak, right, you would actually believe David Icke's version of events of 9/11. And I do personally blame Icke for all the conspiracy theories around 9/11. Because if you trace them all, they all end up back at his fucking front door. Yeah. Knock, knock, knock. Right. And I just refuse to believe them because sometimes, I have said this before. In life, when something so bad happens, you just don't want to believe it's true. You want to be looking for the conspiracy theory that will make you as an individual feel better. So it's much better for people to believe this ludicrous conspiracy theory about 9/11 than it is to believe the truth. What are you saying, Violet? Violet's on about crap again. No respect. You see, in that video, he more or less dismissed. I mean, I'm no religious person myself, but I wouldn't go around dismissing every religion and dismissing people who really and truly believe in their faith for good reasons, not for bad, for good. I wouldn't go around dismissing that. That was a bad thing to do, Icke, which tells me, how dare he run around saying he's the son of God, right? Yeah, I'm the son of God, but I don't believe in any religion, not even Christianity, no. So he must have, if he believes he's the son of God, right, which he does, what's his religion called? Because it's not Christianity, it's not being a Hindu, it's not being a Sikh, it's not being a Muslim, it's not being a Jew, or any of the other out there. It's something that he's not letting on about, right? Because to be the son of God, there has to be some religion or other, doesn't there? him to do that. But he's not coming out with the so-called religion that he believes in. No, well, he's going to keep that one to himself. But yeah, I think people should be more aware of these conspiracy people who, literally live and breathe their own conspiracies. They don't want to think that something can just happen organically, or something has happened. It's very sad, whatever it is. No, well, that shouldn't have happened. I can't believe that's happened. Well, enter the conspiracy theorist, yeah. And you'd rather believe, and people would rather believe that. That is the way I see things. I think that people would rather go down the route of a conspiracy because it's too hard to believe the actual truth. That a princess can be wiped out in a tunnel, in an accident, yeah, without any conspiracy. That 9/11 did happen, and the evidence leading up to 9/11, it was all there. And, and people did actually witness 9/11. And I've always noticed these conspiracy theorists, they get like, there's two favorite words, right? Source and person of notice, right? The source said, a person of notice said, yeah, they're their two favorite words. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Tommy Robinson, and the fact he's a journalist and he's locked up because he's a journalist, right? And I was thinking, I don't fucking understand this. He's saying he's a journalist. He's saying he's a journalist. Is he a journalist? Is he a journalist? And then I've made a few inquiries, and what do I find? What do I find? And this is what the government and the law, the actual law, is using against him. He isn't a journalist in the full meaning of that, right? So to be a journalist, you go to university for 3 years, right? Sometimes 5, it depends what you're doing. You've got to join the NUJ, right? You have to be a member of the NUJ, and you get to carry a fucking press pass. It will get you into things like, if you decide you want to focus in on the royal family, it will get you into things like a meeting with the family, a press call with the family, with the royal family. It will get you into a press call with some sportsman, with with Andy Murray. It would even get you into a press call with Douglas Murray if you've got this proper press pass. Now, if you have got one of those Mickey Mouse press passes and you like to call yourself a citizen journalist, right? I don't have a problem with that, right? But the law and the government, when they want to, they're going to have a problem with that. Okay? So if you think back to when Tommy was arrested in that coffee bar or wherever it was, and he said he was doing his job as a journalist, that policeman deliberately said, "Have you got a press pass?" And I don't know whether Tommy said yes or no, or whatever it was he said. The policeman said, "That's not a proper press pass," right? Because what the police had realized is that Tommy does not have the NUJ press pass. And until he gets one, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, where is he now? He's in jail, isn't he? So he could start in jail right this minute doing an open university course in journalism, right? It will take 5 years, right? But he could. Well, hang on. It will take 5 years, but that depends at what speed you're going to work at. You know, if you're going to be lazy, it could probably take fucking 10 years. But you know, he's got all this time to himself. He could then, once he does that, gets his degree, and becomes a journalist with a proper press pass, he will not find himself in the situation he's in now. And that would be I'm sure, you know, I can't believe that someone who's around him has not told him this. I cannot believe that somebody hasn't told him this, because doing a 3-month course of journalism anywhere, just 3 months, no, that's not good enough, you see, because there's so many different curves and paths in journalism that I can't explain it. You've got to go down so many paths and know so many laws and everything else, and I don't think Tommy has. And he's done a quick journalistic course. He's probably passed it, you know. Yeah, you passed that, but he hasn't got the right credentials that would stop him getting in the trouble he's in at the moment. Yeah. What's this? What are you saying, Dean? But press passes for the BBC are known fake news. No, look, Dean. It doesn't matter that we think that the BBC spew out fake news. Do you understand? The fact is that the guy, the anchorman that sits there giving out the news on BBC. His job, he's a journalist, right? He is just a journalist that's being given the job to be the anchorman for the BBC. So you remember all these people you see on different news outlets, right, on the mainstream media, their original jobs was to be is a journalist. They've all been to university. They've all got their proper credentials. And not one of them, Dean, not one of them from the BBC would ever get arrested or told you're in contempt of court. Do you understand? Because they've got all these credentials. If Tommy gets those credentials, he'll never find himself in this position again. This is what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, the BBC is a good thing to look at, because we know they spit out lies every day. You know, just lie after lie after lie. Nobody says nothing, because they're all journalists. They've all got the credentials. Well, I've said it, so there's nothing you can do about it. And there's literally nothing. A proper journalist will get respected by the police, right, and by the courts of this country. It's unbelievable. But if you're running around with a Mickey Mouse press pass, and when you're up against it, and I don't know, someone in the court says, "So, what's your credentials? You're saying you're a journalist. What is your credentials?" "I'm a citizen journalist." No, that's not going to cut it. No, not one bit. Not these days. They've really come down on people saying they are citizen journalists, right? It doesn't matter if you've paid £200 for this crappy press pass, right? If it's not the correct press pass, you've had it. You will not be considered a journalist. And if you don't have this degree, that degree, and if you haven't passed this and done that, you will not be considered a journalist. That's why somebody around Tommy I can't believe that someone hasn't sat him down at some point and said, "Look, to be a journalist, you have to do A, B, C, D, E. And until you do that, the police and the courts are not going to take you seriously, right? They're doing it. I know the police and the courts, they're doing it deliberately because well, there are a few things he does that a journalist wouldn't do. But then, like I've said before, right, it depends what kind of journalist he sees himself as. Now, I don't know if any of you guys can remember such things as the Cook Report, right? I mean, if you think about things like the Cook Report and other things where these journalists have all gone undercover and they've been, going around with these cameras filming people, and then they put it on the TV, they don't end up in court secretly filming all this crap, right? They don't go to court. They don't get contempt of court. They don't get hauled into a cell overnight. No, because they've got the proper credentials to do the job. So I just wish that someone around Tommy would say, right, I mean, how old is Tommy now? 41. By the time he's 44, he could be a proper journalist and stand and say what he wants, when he wants, without being hauled into fucking prison. And until someone I personally cannot believe that Tommy doesn't know this. He's not stupid. He must know it. He either knows it and chooses not to believe it, or he knows it, and because of his personality, for one, because of his personality, he thinks that I don't know, it would be like conforming in a way, but it's not, because if you do A, B, C, D, and E, and that's going to keep you out of trouble, surely the sensible thing to do, if that's the job you really want, is to do A, B, C, and D, and then you never get into that trouble again. They can't touch you. I can't believe that someone has not said this to Tommy. I mean, you should hear them on Tickety Talk, right? On Tickety Talk, there must be thousands upon thousands of citizen fucking journalists, right? So independent news teams can get a press pass too and still get into major events. Hang on, Dean. So, Dean, where's that gone? Right, Dean. So if you've got all the credentials and you are a journalist and you've got you're part of the NUJ and you've got your press pass and you've done everything, right? Yes, you will get an independent journalist who doesn't work for any national newspaper, who doesn't work for any mainstream TV station, right, or news outlet, can and will be allowed into major events. You can't be stopped because you are a journalist. And, their favourite saying is freedom of the press, isn't it? Freedom of the press. But I'm afraid good old Prince Harry, you can blame him for a lot of this, and he's bemoaning of the press for as long as he has. But that's what Tommy needs to do. And I really wish that somebody would tell Tommy that that's the way forward, because then no one would be able to stop him. No one. If he's covered with that, he'd be able to make documentary after documentary, and no one could say thing. The bloody Cook Report. They used to go undercover in I don't know, nursing homes. They'd go undercover everywhere. They'd go undercover. They went undercover once in Harrods when they were going after Al Fayed. All over the place. And all Cook was, right, I forgot his first name, but all that guy Cook was a bloody journalist. He wasn't anything else but a journalist. But he had the right credentials, so they couldn't touch him. Because he used the freedom of the press. You can't touch me. You know, there's an old saying, you can't get me, I'm part of the union. And in the case of being a journalist, that's very true. Well, that's just me with my little in-joke, shall we say. I really do wish that more people would realise that sitting and announcing that you're a citizen journalist is not and will not get you out of trouble. If anything, they're just going to laugh at you, you know, citizen journalist. It's like that silly ghost, right? He calls himself a journalist. Yeah, you go be a journalist outside. You tell a policeman or somebody in court that you're a journalist, and they take no notice whatsoever. Why do you think that Tommy's documentaries are not given the credit that they should be given? Because they don't look upon Tommy as a journalist. And as nutty as it sounds, guys, that's the truth. So, it's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do about it. It's been like that for hundreds of years. But I think with the onset of smartphones and everything else, you know, everyone sees themselves as a bloody journalist. But when you start getting into the courts and everything else, no, you're not. Did you know that years ago? Roger Cook, that was his name. Yeah. Well done, Broken Brain. Roger Cook. Yeah, the Cook Report. But years ago, I don't think they need to do it now. They can log on, I guess, and get it now with a special PIN number to get in and have a look. But years ago, every morning, as a journalist, you were allowed to go around to the local police station and ask if there was any interesting people locked up last night. And if there was, right, you'd be given the name, the name, the address, the crime, and the time they were up in court. Because those of you who wonder how the press are always in the court at that time, right, at the right time, I'm not on about big cases, right? I'm on about small cases in your little town or wherever you live. It's because, you know, these days they've got a different method, but you used to have to trail around to the police station. Right, who have you got in there today? What did they do last night? And they give you any bit of information that you asked for if you showed that correct pass, right, press pass. Anything you wanted. I mean, they'd have to, they'd have to show their own. Sometimes you wouldn't pick a case because it involved children. Other times, for me personally, other times, the cases I deliberately used to aim for was domestic violence, because I always wanted to, hang on here, Wendy. I always wanted to show how, what the bloke had done to his victim, his wife or his girlfriend. And the ones that really used to piss me off, right, used to send me up the fucking wall and back down again, used to be the ones who'd be in there on a Sunday morning in the cells, right? And I'd get told by the policeman, because them days it was a policeman actually stood at the front desk. Yeah, his football team lost on yesterday. His wife up, his name's blah, blah, blah. He lives at this address. He'd be in court in the morning. at whatever time. They give you the court number, you know, the courtroom number. They give you everything. And they're the ones I always went for at first, because I want, those ones where they would beat the wife or girlfriend up because the football team lost. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting behavior, right? Oh. I see we've got no old Den here. Let's see. Wasn't one of your many carers? Oh, is that careers? Is that meant to be career? Wasn't one of your many careers or carers? I don't know what you're saying, Den. A journalist, Wendy. It's certainly more convincing than you being in the armed forces. Again, what I've got to say to you, Den, is unlike you, Den, if you start at the age of 18, you can fit a lot into your life. So for anyone who's anyway, I'm not even going to bother, right? But I was talking about my favorite cases. It would definitely be that one, simply because of my dislike for men who used to do that. And we used to be quite unbelievable to me also, the amount of men that would be in the cells because they decided to beat their wife up over casualty. And when I say over casualty, the TV program, right, it would be because the wife wanted to watch Casualty, and he, the bloke, the husband or the boyfriend, would want to watch something else. And there's literally men who would beat their wife or girlfriend to a pulp because they couldn't watch the snooker on BBC Two because the wife wanted to watch Casualty. I mean, you know, this was before having 56 TVs in your house was the fashion, yeah? I also used to like the DSS fraud cases as well, because when they came through, I used to find them more than interesting. I've got plenty of proof, then, in my home of of my journalism, right? I can even name a few. There used to be a magazine, I don't know if people can remember it, called Film Review. I have no clue if it's still out there. I used to write for that. There used to be one called Idle. I used to write for that. Take a Break, the Daily Mail, whatever, Den. You know, I don't need to prove nothing to you, Den. Just because you've done nothing other than stand out outside a mosque, that's not my fault. Do you understand? It's just not my fault. But I was talking about people, you know, defrauding the House of Plenty, as I call it, right? And the stories, right? The stories used to be so funny, simply because you couldn't believe that people would go that far for 30 quid a week or whatever the hell it was, right? But then I guess if you're desperate, you're bloody desperate, aren't you? So, you know, yeah, I kind of liked those kind of stories. Uncontrolled violence. I don't know if people can remember the days of the football hooliganism, right? There was nothing I liked better than going down to the police station on Sunday morning to get all the names of the football hooligans that had been arrested on the Saturday night for what, I didn't care what it was for. If they were arrested because of some violence they'd caused some innocent person who wasn't involved in their little skirmishes and fights, their name would end up in the newspaper on Monday. Simple as that. Right? I didn't care what they'd done, but if they'd chosen to go to a town, a town centre and smash it up, and or whatever it was. To me, that behaviour was an abominable, and it needed to be stopped. So I'd make sure their names got in the newspapers, and then I went on a. I started going on this thing of making sure that all these football hooligans that had been locked up for a little bit, I also insisted that they had to be banned from pubs, right? So I went on this little campaign of putting their names in the local newspaper so the different pubs and faces, so different pubs would know who they were and ban them from their pubs. So, yeah, Den, that's the kind of bitch I am, right? That's the kind of bitch I used to be. You literally stick their names and faces in there, ban them from your local pub. Do you want your daughter attacked by this violent individual? Yeah. So, you see, Den, once again, Den, you're talking rubbish. Yeah, and I used to do all that, and I never used to get into any trouble. It never used to high transport or high low. But you see, if you've got the right credentials, you won't. But if you're just sitting there saying you've got them, and then you make a documentary and you put all this stuff in there, and you can't show the right credentials, the courts are not going to take you seriously. They're just going to think, another citizen who thinks they're a journalist because they got a phone. And that's the problem. I mean, you all trust this other alt, what's it called? Alt media or whatever. You've got to remember that most of I think GB News and Talk Radio, I think they are actually journalists. Yeah, they are, because Nick thingy what? He's a journalist. Blah, blah. Yeah, they're just. But then you've got Mayor Toosey. Now, Mayor Toosey was absolutely, it did make me laugh, but he was absolutely furious the other week because he got arrested. Oh, is that right? He got arrested because he didn't have the right press pass. Yeah? In other words, he wasn't a member of the NUJ. And he has said that he's not going to become a member of the NUJ, and that there should be another thing put in place for people like him who are just citizen journalists. It's not going to happen. You know, he said he doesn't want to spend 5 years getting his degree and getting this, becoming a member of the NUJ. And he wants something else put in place for citizen journalists. It's not going to happen because he's just as capable of, I think I said, you know, I've noticed recently that he has started with a lot of clickbait on his channel, right? Which will turn out to be nothing about what the title is, right? And yet it's supposed to be, remember, it's supposed to be a revolving news channel, his channel. And yet it's not. And then Saturday, I think he sent is it the Ukrainian or Polish guy out to do the recording in London. Now, this Polish Ukrainian guy, he hasn't got any credentials to be. He's not a bloody journalist. He'll end up getting locked up. They lock him up. They're already after him anyway because the poo guy stands there with Hamas are terrorists, which is true. So they're going to lock him up. I'm just saying all this because I just can't believe that people haven't told Tommy. Yeah, Den, there's the link, or if anyone else wants to pop on for 5 minutes. That somebody hasn't told Tommy what to do. And he's got the perfect time to do it now, not unless he's writing some other book or other in there. But that won't do him any good if he wants to be recognised and took seriously as a journalist. What else has been going on? Oh my God. I don't know how, well, I don't think any of you watch EastEnders, right? But I was watching EastEnders last night and I laughed from beginning to end, right? I fucking laughed my head off from beginning to end. Honestly, you know, there's I love that. Linda Carter, right? She plays the part of a drunk so well. I love watching her as a drunk, right? So she's wobbling around as this drunk. And then all of a sudden she goes outside and it's pouring with rain. And EastEnders does the old, like Scrooge thing, you know, if you could see into the future, what would happen? And old Linda Carter goes on her journey, right? It was so, I don't think it was meant to be funny. I found it hilarious. I don't know if it was meant to be funny. I don't think it was, actually. But yeah, there's a story I could tell. But if I was to tell that story, you see, I would be berated by some of the people on here. I would have them writing in, right? I would have them boo. But it's a true story. Yeah, it's a true story. And I literally watch EastEnders 2015, right? The whole fucking lot of the year 2015, right? And every time I watch it, that year 2015, I could put my foot through the fucking TV for every episode. Yeah, and I'm going to leave it like that for now. Yeah. All I'll say is no, I'm not going to say any more. Very tempting. Hi, Jason. Let's see. Wendy, do you think that if Tommy did everything right, he would get a proper press card? I'd say he has no chance. No. Look. Wake Up UK. If he does everything right, and if he got his degree, they have to give him that press card. There's no if, buts, or maybe about it. It comes along. You get your press card. So, yeah, he would get his press card. I mean, so somebody just tell me, Roger Cook. How did Roger Cook get his press card? Do you think like he rolled up and said, hello, I'm a citizen journalist? I mean, Roger Cook used to make some dodgy programs, you know, Jason. And the only way he got away with it was because he's a journalist. Because if he hadn't been a journalist, there's no way. I think he went after the guy that used to own Marks and Spencer's, somebody called Green. Is it Robert Green? The guy that used to like run Marks and Spencer's. And he tracked him down in some hot country somewhere. And he walked up to him and he's saying A, B, C and all the rest of it. And he got away with it. He didn't get arrested. Nothing happened to him because he's a bloody journalist. But yeah, if Tommy did everything right, he'd have no problem getting his card and getting a press pass. Now, the problem would start if, when he went into a press call, I don't know, say Sadiq Khan was having a meeting and there was a press meeting too. And Tommy stood up and started asking all these questions, right? And he didn't answer he didn't ask them in the correct manner. Then the word would be put about. You see, this is what happens. The word gets put about. Don't let them in because they'll ask the wrong questions. But you can get around that. But you can't get around not having the right credentials. And it's not easy to get that card. And the reason it's not easy, because it's normally takes 3 to 5 years. And I think what Tommy wants to be is an investigative journalist, right? I don't think he wants to be the pen pushing journalist, right? I think he wants to be the investigative one. And there's still many good investigative journalists around. And they're still doing their jobs, and then they're not on the alternative media at all. And they're still telling the truth. But guess what? They have their outlets are getting smaller and smaller. The BBC won't use them anymore. ITV doesn't use them anymore. Channel 4 definitely won't use them. You know, if you haven't got a lefty view on everything, forget Channel 4. They just don't want to know. So what they have to do, what they've done, a lot of them, is they do make their own YouTube things or even their own websites, and they put up their investigations on there. But unfortunately, it still doesn't gain the mass populace view that being on ITV or BBC or even Sky would get. That's whether that changes in the future, I don't know. I mean, so much changes, doesn't it? I don't know. Oh yeah, Kenny, I remember the Cook report. God, he used to get up to some stuff, didn't he? I used to look forward to that, but all of that went because it was too much. You know, they didn't like people like Roger Cook interfering and wanting to know the truth. You know, no, bad. We just want lies for the populace to hear, lies for them to listen to. And that's what the BBC do. They put all journalistic morals out the fucking window and just lie about everything. We've all heard the old saying of don't believe what you read in the newspapers, right? We've all heard that. But until, I don't know, 5 years ago, I would never have thought that saying would have to be added to the news reports on the TV, because that's where you've got to look at it now. Because what I've done is I've literally sat watching something being reported on Sky News, and then I've seen it at the same time being reported on the alternative news on the social media, and it's two different stories. You wouldn't think the one on the social media was the same story that Sky News was reporting. So I know for a fact that all those news outlets, they lie on some stories, not all, but definitely on some. Jason, I could do the woo report. Yeah. Oh God. But yeah, it's true about and now I do believe there's you go onto a website, a special PIN number, you get in there, and as a journalist you will get everyone who's been locked up for the night locally, kind of thing, and what they've been doing and what crime they've committed, and you'll get their name, their address, their date of birth, everything you need to know about them. And then you trot along to the court on Monday morning or whenever it is and make sure you're there for the case that you want to be there for. So the police love to give out the details, but they will only do it to the press, the actual press. If you were to walk in there and go, I'm a citizen journalist and I want to know who you've got in the cells, they'd say, it's none of your fucking business. Get out. But there's too much of this so-called citizen. That's the point, you know. I was looking at a video of the Lee Rigby murder the other day, and it was like the actual event. the day it happened, right? And I don't know. Is it just me? But you know, the woman that went up to the one of them, Nigel Aber bloody Bawaja or whatever he was called, and he had that axe in his hand, right? I don't know. I can't believe that woman was sat on the bus, saw what happened, and just an ordinary woman, and got off the fucking bus and walked over to this bloke with an axe in his hand, right? He just murdered Lee, and she starts talking to him. Now, after so much time has gone on, I'm thinking, no, that's not right. There's something funny about that. There's nothing, not about what happened to Lee Rigby. That woman, there's something very strange about that woman. Because I don't know many women, right? And I really don't think I don't know any women that would have witnessed that event. I thought, well, I think I'm going to get up off this bus now, and I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to talk to the person that's just murdered that soldier. No. For some reason now, I've got it in my head that whoever that woman was, she wasn't no ordinary, everyday, common or garden housewife or anything else. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I don't know who the hell she was, but no. Because if you think about it, right, if you put yourself in that situation, if you think about sitting on a bus, man or woman, you sat on the bus, and you see that animal do what he did to Lee Rigby, and you don't think, well, I'm going to get off the bus, and you say, I don't know, if you had a weapon of some sort, I could maybe understand it. But as a woman, you do not get off a bus and go wandering over to this madman whose hands are full of blood. He's got some sort of hatchet in his hand, and start talking to him. No. I mean, the way that happened also, the men who were around at that time, right? All the men who were in the cars or walking by or whatever, right? How the hell, why did not one man think, you know what, I'm not fucking have this. I don't know, pull a pole up from somewhere and just grab whatever and start attacking those two individuals. The whole thing, well, I thought that day, actually. I mean, I remember going nuts because people, rather than go and help, people decided, well, the best thing to do was to get their phones out because, well, that would stop the two lunatics, wouldn't it? Well, obviously not. Obviously not. Of course not. Nobody thought of picking something up, anything heavy, anything that would harm, picking something up and going and stopping them. Nobody apart from this woman that decided to get off a bus. I guess it's my journalistic mind. I keep watching it, and there's something very wrong about that woman. No, she was too calm. For such an event, she was just too calm. And that tells me that she was trained in something, because she was just too calm. And I know that, who cares now? It's been so long, blah, 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 blah. Well, I care, because I'd like to know who that woman was. I don't believe she was a common or garden housewife sat on the bus or just left the office and was going home. No. She was, when I've been watching her actions, her movements, everything about her tells me there's something. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's something about her and her actions that day. Yeah, definitely not just no. Bad Marsh, I don't know what you mean. Twos what? Don't know. Key said, what's that? I read that right. You put pig, did you? And you meant if. That happens to that has to happen to all of us. So what he or she has put pigs and she meant if. So if it wasn't for citizen journalists, so much stuff would still be being swept under the rug. I'd take a citizen journalist over a John Sweeney any day. Yes, well, what Tommy did with John Sweeney was good. But just think, if he'd been a journalist, you know, I don't like saying that, but if he'd been a qualified journalist himself, Tommy, when he did that, it would have got far more attention than it did, right? But yeah, John Sweeney, yeah. I'm not. There's no argument there, love. None whatsoever. It's a dirty old game, and money is passed about, and you pay money to get some information. Nothing is ever what it seems. Let me just put it that way. Nothing at all is ever what it seems. Which is why the end of the chat shows have happened. Once it came to light about what was really going on with these TV chat shows, they had to end because the public started seeing the fraud in it all, the lies of it all, how people were being manipulated. Because their favourite trick used to be So you'd get a family who were like arguing over something, right? So you get one part of the family, then you get another part of the family turn up at the studio. And their favorite trick would be to split the family up and put them in separate rooms. And you'd get one runner running from one part of the family to the other part of the family, giving them lies. So by the time they get on stage, right, with whichever show it is, they are so riled up and angry that sometimes they go on there, and the men especially would want to punch the lights out of another family member. Now, that had been done deliberately because the runners had deliberately wound that person up about that other member, saying that the other family member had been talking about, right? And so that happened all the time. And another thing that used to happen was, say you got someone that turned up and that they'd have a white blouse on, right? The amount of money that used to get wasted, it was ridiculous. They'd have a white blouse on. Or you'd get someone the same day would turn up and they'd be dressed in, I don't know, a stripy dress, right? Like a stripy dress. Well, then all of a sudden, no, she can't wear that white blouse and she can't wear that stripy dress. It's going to clash with the cameras, can't have that. So then someone would be sent off to get the size and a new blouse, a new dress. And then before all that, whilst you're waiting for your new dress or your new blouse, they then go and shove them all in these makeup chairs. These people actually get, the old makeup put on their face and everything. and the stuff to stop their face looking shiny on TV. Because that's what I look for now. That's what I look for. How can I put it to you? If someone's been interviewed on some TV program, if their face is shiny, I know they've just practically walked in off the street, sat down, doing the interview. They don't really care, and off they go. But if they're sat there and their face is not shiny, and they've got clothes on that will not clash with the bloody camera, right? I know that they're not to be believed at all, because they've been primed, they've been primed, and they are fucking ready to give out the bullshit that they've been told to give out. So that's one trick you should always watch for. But yeah, that's why all these chat shows are. And anyway, it was getting beyond a joke, wasn't it? I mean, what was he called? Oh yeah, Jeremy Kyle. Jeremy Kyle went too far. I mean, to be quite honest, even his voice, when he does his news thing now, right? I think, how dare you? You did that show for God knows how many years. And when you know the inside about these shows, right? When you know how people are manipulated, how vulnerable people get manipulated into saying things they didn't really want to say, right? And then he stands there and preens, as he's proven right once again on his precious fucking show. Yeah, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth when you see him on this alternative media now, because he's not a man to be trusted. Actually, he's got a great big house and farm, right? Great big fucking thing it is, just outside of Henley-on-Thames, right? Massive, gated, you know. So when he used to do the Jeremy Kyle show, and he'd be talking about, you know, everyday people, there's people who can't afford this. I used to think, well, hang on a minute, because you've lived a very privileged life up to now, right? And you don't exactly live in the poorest part of town. Yeah, I think it's 3 miles outside of Henley-on-Thames, where you can see where he lives, right, with his fucking horses and everything else. And his father, for God's sake, was something to do with looking after the Queen. I don't know. Something to do with looking after the Queen. So he didn't exactly come from poor background. I think the biggest laugh I ever had was when they decided amongst themselves that what they do is they do shows of of him going to live on a council estate for a week, right? And he'd only have £27 to live on. Now, anyone who believes that he only lived off £27 that week, right? You're mad. He lived as normal. He turned up at that council estate when it was time to do the filming. Then he'd go back to his own wherever, right? He never lived off £27 a week. Are you mad? Yeah. And then there was another one where he said, Jeremy Kyle with the gangs, right? He had any copious amounts of security. He wasn't wandering around the streets on his own. Yeah, I remember he went in this flat, and because the flat wasn't clean enough for him, it was meant to be a council flat, an empty flat in the middle of, I don't know, some weary estate, tiresome estate somewhere, and he went in there. Oh, I can't live in that. That's not clean enough. Oh, that's fair enough. But you're saying that you're doing this show and you're going to be living the life of what these people have to live. So wouldn't you? This be the way you'd? Well, what we'll do when it's time for filming, I'll come in and I'm here, and then once we cut for the day, it stops. I'm gonna go home. So you fooling the public like that en masse like that is yeah, they can't do it anymore, thank God. But they, oh my God, did they used to? When I think of yeah, the games they'd play with the public, honest to God. And if you were ever a guest on there, right, you could expect new clothes. You always paid. Well, sorry, that's a lie. That's a lie. So we'd go in categories, right? So say you've got, let me think now, you've got a man and a wife, right? And they've had some dispute. So the man, right, would get paid over £200, right? And the wife would get paid over £200. So you got the man and the wife. And the story is basically about them, right? But you've always got the add-ons, haven't you? You've got like the friend, the male friend, and then you'll have the female friend, right? So that's 4 people on the stage. So it's £200 each for the man and the wife, right? And then for the other 2, they'd get £100, but also they get a night in a hotel free drink, free meals, yeah, free meals, and then right, when they'd had their everything free and they told their story and off they went to be happy, right? Knock, 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 or ring, ring, ring. It would be the women's magazines on at them next. Now, when you're talking women magazines, right, you're talking big, well, not big money, but a lot of money. So for a story like, let me think, my husband was living 2 lives, you know, like some bloke had 2 wives, one part of the country and another in another part of the country. And one of the wives finds out, right? So that wife, the wife that found out, the one that brought the story to the TV and then to the magazine, right? She would get about up to 1,000, 1,500 off the women's magazine alone. And if they took a picture of her, you could add another 500 onto that. It was quite a lucrative thing for people to be doing if they were willing to air their lives publicly like that. But that's what magazines and the TV chat shows used to bank on, that people would do it for the money, and more or less they did. What heathen? Liverpool's been voted what? Well, tell you what, my friend who's lived in Liverpool all of his life, I reckon Liverpool's been took over by migrants. Certain parts of Liverpool are not the same. It's more or less been took over by migrants. How true that is, I don't know. You know, it's not for me to say. Most generous city, well, it probably has, yeah. Well, whatever. But it's a bit sad that you know, Liverpool hasn't missed out on this migrant thing either. Yeah. Right, okay then, that's me done. No doubt Dan will have recorded everything. Okay, thanks for being here. Good night, guys.